It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Rachel Levy. Your maiden name was Schlomowitz.
Yes, it was.
And Rachel, you came from a town called Behutz.
No, it was a tiny little village, Behutz, and it was in the mountains.
The Carpathian Mountains.
Yes, it was sort of low in the valley, and the Jewish people were living in the valley mainly, not in the mountains. But the non-Jewish people all lived in the mountains, and they spoke all languages. It was originally it was Czechoslovakia, then it was
Romania.
Romanian. It wasn't Romanian. It was so near Romania that it was a mixed language. Everybody was speaking different languages.
And did you come
Ukrainians?
Wow.
Yes.
Did you come from a religious family?
Yes, my father was bearded, strammeled, very religious, very strict.
Were they Hasidische or?
I'm often asked what rabbi did we follow, but I was too young to know about that. I had no idea. Hasidish, I suppose you call them Hasidish. My mother wore a sheitel, and she was, they shaved, they didn't even have hair. I mean, modern days they have hair under the sheitel, but not my mother was shaved underneath.
And what year were you born?
1930.
And what is your earliest memories or recollections of growing up?
Well, I grew up till I was 13 in the village. It was a happy childhood. We had everything that we needed to have. My mother had a little shop attached to the house. We had a house. I was one of 5. I was second. My brother was the eldest. And then my little 2 sisters and my little brother, who I think wasn't 3 when we were taken away.
And you have a picture of your...
I have a picture of a very dark picture, very little.
But this is the only picture you have of your...
This was saved by my mother's sister. It wasn't me. And we weren't a family that were photographed very often.
Can you show us, Rachel, the people in the picture?
Yes. Can you see if I hold it like that?
Okay. Yes.
I can't see it. Okay. Starting from left, there's my mother's sister, Auntie Rivka, and next to her in the background is my mother holding the baby, my little brother Ben Zvi. And there's Auntie Rochel, my mother's sister, and there's, I have to look, and that's me next to Auntie Rochel's over there. My brother, my Auntie Rochel has got her arm around my brother's neck. That's my older brother. And next to him is my mother's brother, Gedalia. And down below is my little sister Rivkala and Etta.
And how old are you in this picture?
I assume it was certainly before we were taken away, because Auntie Rivka and my Auntie Rochel and Gedalia, Uncle Gedalia, they lived in Ternavo. They didn't live in the village. So they were on a visit when that picture was taken. They usually came around Pesach time, Chalamoid. They came to visit, and they very often stayed a few days and went back.
And your father's not in the picture?
My father was not in the picture. Whether he didn't want to be or he was away, I don't know.
And how did the picture survive?
It survived because Auntie Rivka had it. She didn't get to camp. My Auntie Rivka was at home, and they were coming after the whole town that my mother came from, which was Ternova. and they were all taken away, but Auntie Rivka was already going out with a young man, David, and they escaped out of our village, and they escaped as far as Budapest, where my Auntie Rivka could speak very good Hungarian. She got away with working for a while. And then Uncle David didn't speak Hungarian, so he didn't leave the place they lived in for a short while. And then they started making their way to Palestine, which was still occupied by the British, and didn't get away for very far. They got to Cyprus, and there they were stuck because they couldn't enter Palestine. Eventually they did, but it was a long time, and then they actually got married in Israel.
And it's amazing. She had the picture, and that's how.
Yes, she had the picture, and when I visited her in Israel the first time, she gave me that little picture.
And how was do you remember your reaction when you saw the picture of your sisters?
Well, yes, I knew it so well. I knew it so well. I knew my aunties very well. I stayed with them many times. My favorite place was to go and see my family.
Rachel, it's amazing. Thank God you have this picture. And Rachel, can I just ask, growing up in your town, did you go to a school? Was it a Jewish school?
The school was closed the minute the Nazis took over, before Hungary, even before Hungary was occupied. They closed the little school very early on in the war. Not that I knew much about it. We didn't have any communication in our village, only by word of mouth that whoever was passing through.
And was there a synagogue in your village?
We had a synagogue. We had kosher butchers. The shochet came once a week. We had our own chickens. We had our own, they didn't have meat, our own, but there was a butcher. And everything available to live on we had. We didn't have a bad life. In fact, we had a very luxurious life. We had gardens with fruit and gardens with vegetables and a special kitchen garden. We had food. We didn't need much. My grandfather, my father's family, lived in the village, and my grandfather had a flour mill. In fact, he had another one somewhere else, but I only knew the one in the village, and he wasn't far to walk to because we had a river. The water was running through the middle of the village.
And the friends that you had, were they mainly Jewish friends, or did you?
They were all Jewish friends. We didn't mix. The only time we mixed with the non-Jews when they came to work for us, and they did. They used to come and do domestic work or look after the cows and milk the cows, look after the gardens and plant and dug up in the autumn any vegetables that needed to be planted and dug up. We were self-sufficient apart from meat. As I say, chickens we had the shochet come to the doorstep. So we were very well looked after. We had independence from other things. We had no electricity, we had no running water, we had no sanitation that worked, nothing. It was very primitive, but a happy village.
And you had a loving family, and
I had a lovely family. My father's family lived in the middle of the village, and he had two daughters. My father, of course. Father was the eldest, I think. And one daughter was married, had twin boys, and one daughter was married that I remember the wedding, which lasted 3 days. My other auntie, who had the twins, was married to a sofa, and he was just writing the twins' twillen. He never got finished. They were all taken away.
And Rachel, did you ever go visit other villages, or did you go to Budapest ever? Or
No, I was privileged, being the second in our family. I was privileged to help my mother, and while helping my mother, she appreciated it, and she always used to say, you can go to your grandparents now in Ternova and have a break. And so I used to go and stay with my other grandparents in Ternova. And that was my greatest pleasure, because there were all my uncles and aunts there. And my grandmother and my grandfather, who was the lovely, lovely man. I also had a great-grandfather there, and he was 90 when he was taken away.
And Rachel, can I ask, what happened to the family from Ternova?
Apart from the young ones who got away, Auntie Rochel didn't get away, so she was taken to Auschwitz. Uncle Gedalia was also taken into camp. My Uncle Haskell got away because he joined the Czech army. And my Auntie Rivka, as I said, was away to Budapest first and then carried on. But Auntie Rochel, when I got to Belsen myself, I found her there. And but she was in a block that was a hut, and she was already ill, and was very ill. Right in front of that block where she was the heap of people by then who died, and you could see people being thrown on the heap. But she got very ill while I was there, and she died the week before liberation.
So sad, just a week before.
She was very ill. She was very... she was talking, and she talked to two of her friends within that place, who she told them, you know my mother, they were friends of hers, her two sisters, and she asked them would they look after me. She said, you knew my mother, you know who she is, and gave them my date of birth, so that she knew she was going to die. And she died the next day.
And Rachel, can I just ask, do you recall when the Germans, when the Nazis invaded Hungary?
Yes. Yeah. Up to the last minute when they escaped. The hierarchy had escaped already, and we heard the war coming near. We heard the sounds of the aeroplanes.
Did you have a radio at home, or with the newspaper?
At home we had no. We never had any information. We didn't seek information. We had people came by, including the Shochet, to get information from them. But we didn't know where we were going, or at least the children didn't know. We didn't know.
And you didn't know what was happening in Europe the years before?
No, not much. We knew there was trouble, and I think the parents knew, but they knew, the adults knew that we were going on a journey when we got to the first camp, the ghetto, still in Carpathen. And then from there we went on in the trucks to Auschwitz.
Do you remember leaving your home, having...
Yes, of course.
It must have been a major trauma, terrible trauma.
But children were children. We asked where we were going. We didn't know where we were going.
What could you take with you?
Not much, only what we carried in our hands. Because we walked to the ghetto, which was in Solotvano, a place we didn't know.
Do you remember the date, roughly which month? Which
I
month
don't
it was?
remember dates of any of them. I wasn't used to knowing
This was
dates.
near the end of the war. This was.
No, we didn't know. As children, we knew very little.
And leaving your home, did you ever think you'd be coming back, or did you think this was temporary?
Well, that was, I don't know, we didn't, my father had been taken before us, and we never heard from him again.
How old were you at the time? When
13.
And do you know whatever happened to your father?
No. Just heard that he had died. It was a labour force camp that he was in. This was by the Hungarians, who then were Nazis.
So the Hungarians took your father?
And us. The Hungarians were in charge by then.
Was this the Arrow Cross, or was it just normal, regular
no
Hungarians?
Red Cross, no.
The Arrow Cross, it was the
No.
Hungarian
The Hungarian gendarme came and took us away.
And when you had to leave, how did you go to the ghetto? Did you have to walk?
Yeah.
Did you see any of the non-Jews? Were they watching you when
No,
you departed?
they had been very good to us while we were before we were taken away. They were very good to us. They hid us once, and we got away with it. And then they came back some time later, and they hid us again. We had notice of their coming, and they had to give us up. They were very kind to us. I have no complaints of our non-Jewish people. They all knew us. They worked for us. They worked for my grandfather in the mill. They worked in our gardens. We knew them. They knew us well. And we were on good terms.
And what do you remember of the ghetto?
I don't remember much, but we didn't have much food. And one time my mother got me dressed up. I don't know where she got the clothes other than what we wore as from little girls. And she said that you can get through the fence, go out and find some potatoes or something to eat. And she pushed me through, and then I did. And I could speak a little Hungarian, and I did some shopping and came back again.
And at home, did you speak Yiddish? Or
Yes, only Yiddish.
only Yiddish?
But I could speak other languages because we spoke to the non-Jewish people in other languages. But at home we only spoke Yiddish.
And Rachel, how long did you stay in the ghetto?
I don't think it was very long, but I can't tell you how long.
And from there, where were you taken?
In the trucks. In the crowded trucks with young and old and sick people and babies crying and children crying and standing up, no seats, no sanitation, nothing. Just pushed into trucks and went somewhere. We didn't know where we were going, and we landed in Auschwitz.
And you weren't taken on the train? It was a more...
That was the train, the trucks.
The cattle trucks. These were
Yeah.
the cattle... Do you remember that voyage going to Auschwitz?
Very well. People crying, people davening, people... No seats to sit on, people not being able to stand up. We just hung on to my mother.
Was it a long journey?
I can't even remember how long it took.
And what happened when the train arrived in Auschwitz?
We were rushed out of the train. Everybody thought the Gestapo were there. And they pushed us this way and that way. We run in this way, left and right. And my mother, with my two little sisters and the baby in her arms, went to the right, and she pushed me and my brother to the left, so that we saved. And she must have known. She knew. We didn't know, but she knew.
Were you on the right lane with your brother? With your mother?
I was pushed. Yeah, we were off the trucks. Yes, just got out, and she pushed us to the left. That's where they chose people which way to go. And my mother, my two little sisters, and my little baby brother just saw them go.
And you never saw them again?
No, they went straight to the gas chambers.
If your mother wouldn't have pushed you and your brother to the left...
She must have known.
And did you ever see Mengele?
Mengele was in charge in Auschwitz, yes.
And did you remember seeing him?
Many times. They used to come in, and once we were in the block, they used to come in and count us, and then we had to go outside and stand and count us, the whole block. And then one day he came one morning, early morning, and chose me to go to the gas chambers. And my friend from a Turnover, little girl, friend I had, Zeldy, pushed me and her to the left to go to the gas chambers. And we marched out of our block straight to towards the gate, where we should have gone through the gate, but we didn't. We were standing outside the kitchens, and there was some sort of hold-up. And then there was a commotion, and Zeldy got hold of my hand and pulled me. Let's go, they're coming out with the breakfast urns to take to the people in the blocks. And we ran away.
And they saved your life?
Saved our life, yeah. We then got counted, and it was a problem to count because it didn't tally. But we got away with it, and then we were taken soon after out of Auschwitz.
Can I ask, Rachel, how long were you in Auschwitz?
I don't know. We were there till we heard the planes come over our heads. We heard that the war was coming near, so they emptied out Auschwitz.
And in Auschwitz, do you recall being hungry,
of course,
a lack of food?
We didn't get much food. We got horrible bread and soup, but the bread had to last, and it wasn't that edible to eat it because it dried like a brick.
So you must have been, you were only 13?
Yes.
You must have been one of the youngest in...
Well, no, my friend Zeldy was the same age. Others were the same age.
And what did you do during the day?
Nothing. We were late arriving, and we didn't work. I know that there were people who worked in Auschwitz. We didn't work. We didn't do anything. We just sat around and talked about food, about home, about who's alive, who's well enough. And we mustn't be ill, because if we were ill, we were taken to another block.
And when did you understand what had happened to your mother and your sisters and your little brother? Did you know very soon?
My big brother was separated from here, from me, and he went with the men. And I saw him the next morning in the opposite camp, men only. And then I didn't see him the next day. I didn't see him again till where he found me after liberation.
And when did you realize that your mother...
I knew that once I was in camp, we could smell the gas chambers.
It must have been the most terrible, terrible feeling, knowing that your mother and your
Well,
siblings
we were all in the same boat in the block. And we all knew by then what was happening.
And in the barracks that you were, was it mainly children or were there adults
No,
as well?
no, there was adults. In fact, that's what I also saw. I saw my Auntie Rochel, but she was taken away from there to a working camp. So I only saw her for a short while. I saw cousins. Yeah. They were all different, went out of there to different camps. I was taken to a camp not very far away, and it was a nice camp. And Shelley discovered in peacetime that camp was used originally for the officers to go have a break, the Germans. So it was a bit of a luxury there. We got food, we got good food.
And what did you do in the camp?
There they took us out to dig ditches in groups of 10
And you were only...
with shovels.
You were only 13?
It didn't matter. They took us out and we were digging for hours, digging ditches, and then back to the camp. And then eventually they took us from there, going to walk. So we walked and we walked.
Was this the Death March?
Yeah.
When they realized that the Allies were approaching?
Yes. It took about 21 days to get to where we were going.
And on the Death March, were you given any food?
No.
So how did you survive?
We survived on running out of line and picking up whatever vegetables were left in the fields, raw. And the guards weren't, and in the end the guards were not given food either. They didn't eat either. There was abandonment, there's really abandoned, and we got to Belsen that way.
And in that Death March, did you see people falling down and...
Yes, those that couldn't walk, they fell down and they shot them. The guards shot people. So you had to be strong and you had to show you were strong and you had to walk.
And Rachel, can I ask you, when you were walking in the Death March, did you see any German civilians or any...
No. We didn't even see civilians when we walked out for the day's digging. They used to all the shutters used to be down on houses. They didn't show us doing that. The Germans shut their shutters. They didn't watch us when we were marching through.
So you never came in across any German civilians? Or...
No. We went over fields and farms and sometimes rested. We were allowed to rest on a farm or somewhere in the night.
And who were you with when you were in
I was still with my friend Zeldie.
And you helped each other?
Yes. When we got to Belsen, I found my Auntie Rochel there. And she found 2 of her sisters there.
And how were the conditions in Bergen Belsen? They said there was...
Well, at the beginning we still got food, but it got worse and worse. And then we were only digging, and the Germans got food and we ate what we found in the bins that they threw out. And when that ran out, we just didn't have food. And when we were not walking by then, we were on our stomachs, we couldn't walk. The liberation came, and that the British liberated Belsen, and we shouted for food. We wanted food. So they gave us their rations, and it was bad.
Because a lot of people, their bodies couldn't take the...
We had stomach typhoids and all sorts of things.
And do you remember the day when the British liberated Bergen-Belsen?
Yeah. not a date. I've no
But you
idea
remember the day.
date.
You remember.
I remember the feeling we're liberated, and so we didn't have water. We didn't have clean water, but they brought in, it took a day or two to get water and organized, for us to go to get water to drink. And they took us out of there very quickly. And they got big barracks in part of the town. And we got in there. And we were treated by the British nurses.
And while you were in Bergen Belsen, you must have seen a lot of dead bodies, a lot of piles.
Constantly they were thrown on the... I watched my auntie Rochel being thrown on the heap. You couldn't avoid it.
And Rachel, can I just ask, it's a very difficult question, but during this time, how was could you think about what was going on, your mental health? Could you think, why is Hashem doing this to me? Why is this happening?
Why? Yes. There's no answer to that.
But did you always keep your emunah, your faith?
No. I don't think I thought about it.
I think it was just to survive, And the British, when they helped you recover, were they very caring and
very, very caring? They were wonderful. The British nurses, first of all, had to deal with us because we were crawling with lice. Our bodies were crawling with lice, and they had to clean us up. And some people had their hair cut off again, because we were shaved originally in Auschwitz. All our hair was shaved off. But by the time we got to Belsen, we were full of lice in our heads. And they took great care to clean us up. And they took great care in feeding us good food and water.
And do you remember the first piece of food that you received?
The first food that we had, it still went from the soldiers. That upset our stomachs, of course, more. And we were quite ill, so we didn't crave for food then. We only wanted clean water.
It was a luck, because those people that ate a lot of them
We
died.
got ill.
Yeah. Their bodies
ill.
couldn't...
You couldn't help it, and the food they threw was a fatty meat in a tin. Yeah.
And how long did you stay in the recovery in Bergen, outside Bergen Belsen?
Well, considering we were liberated April, it went into summer, good weather. I remember good weather. And we were free and clean, and we could move about places. And the British were very, very helpful. They were there quite a while till we got shipped out of there to go. Liberation they took us out to Prague.
And what had you heard of your brother at this time?
No. Nothing.
So you have a picture of your...
Yeah, my brother.
This is Cheskel.
Yes. My brother was Cheskel, and he was, by then, I was 14, and he was 15 plus, 16 nearly. He was liberated, I don't know where, I know nothing of his survival because he didn't talk. But when I got to Prague, we were housed by whoever it was. It was called Central British Fund, actually. And we were looked after in good places and clean, and we were free to travel. The Czechs gave us free to travel anywhere we wanted to. And people found family. and people inquired, one of if you saw somebody, you would describe your family and try and see if they knew them or name. Or I never found anybody. But I did find during that time, I found those two sisters that my aunt gave responsibility to looked after me. They really looked after me. They were great. And whatever they did, they had schlepped me with. And I didn't find till I found Auntie Paula. Well, I call Auntie Paula. She was the person that I knew at home in Ternova, not my village, in my mother's town. And that was a town that my family owned a knitting factory. And I'll show you a picture of that. And then she knew other people. And she somehow found out, I get my times mixed up. Anyway, I found this lady called Paula. And she had a sister there as well. And then when people went to looking for their family, asking other people, because our train wasn't the only one coming into Prague, a lot of other people, to try and find a connection somewhere. I didn't find a connection. So I wanted to travel and find out, and I didn't know how to get back home. So I just got a train that went to Budapest, from Prague to Budapest. And I got to Budapest and I thought, well, what am I doing here? I don't know how to get back to the village. I was all on my own. So I went back to Prague, where I had a place being looked after. And that's when I found Auntie Paula. But then, in between that, I had been taken to Bratislava by the two sisters. They said they're going to go, they've got a family in Bratislava. Would you like to come with us? And I said, well, I've got nowhere else to go, I'll come with you. And what these two sisters did, they took me with, and we went to stay with her cousins, their cousin. And on a few days, I was resting there a few days, and then I heard them talk of going to Palestine, and they would make their way to Palestine. What should they do with Ruchola, me? And they also had a family who owned a farm, small farm, outside Bratislava in the country, and they talked to him, and he said, I will take her as a worker and I'll keep her for her, and she'll work for me. And they put this to me, they're going to go on a journey, it's going to be very difficult, and we can't take you, but this family man who runs a farm is willing to take you to his home, and you'll work for him for your keep. I said, okay, I got nowhere else. So I went, he came for me, took me there, and he took me there, and he said, rest today, you don't have to work today, start tomorrow, and I'm going out in the field to work, and you have your rest. He fed me first, gave me food, and he lived in a nice little house, and go and have a rest, and tomorrow you'll start work. I said, right. And it's all in Yiddish, because I could speak Czech to him as well. And I went to rest, and I wasn't there resting for long when I heard footsteps. And I had the feeling those footsteps were for me. And when I opened the door, I heard these footsteps on the wooden entrance, and it was my brother. And he had followed all my route, asking people, where was I? And he got to Bratislava, and they told him I'd gone to this farm. And that was my brother, how he found me. And then he called in the man from the field and said, I've come to, I'm my sister. I would like to take her back. May I take her back? And he said, well, if you found each other, good, take her. He said, that's fine. And he took me back on a train to go back to Prague, to the same place, because there's always a home there. That's when I met my Auntie Paula. No, she wasn't my auntie then. Paula.
And your encounter meeting your brother, it must have been incredibly emotional.
It was emotional. It was also very difficult because he came by train from Prague to pick me up, and I had to go back. The train contained the Russian soldiers, because the Russia was in Prague, wasn't it? And to go on the train with a load of soldiers in the carriages was dangerous for girls. And he didn't know, he kept hiding me. He shut me in a little, which was some sort of toilet for the soldiers. And then one day, I was so skinny, I was so little, he pushed me under a seat to avoid being seen by the soldiers. Anyway, we got back.
And he never spoke at all? Did you ask him where he had been or which camp he had been?
I don't think I even asked. He never spoke. He just said, the first thing I said to him, the first thing I said to him was, now there's two of us, can we go back home? I said, we've got a house, we'll go back to our house. So he said, no, we won't. He said, I've been back. I've already been back. And there was nothing there for us. There's other people didn't want to let me in the house.
In your own house?
My own house was occupied. So he came away. And he said, we'll never go back there. And he didn't go back there ever. But I did eventually. Shelley and a cousin from Israel, my cousin Steinmetz's family, my mother's family.
Many years later you went back. And did they allow you to go inside the house when you went back?
No, we didn't go back there, home. We didn't go back at all. My brother said, we'll never go back. But when we met Paula, I also met my other uncles who was in the Czech army. And that takes another story, because she then got friendly with my uncle, whose wife didn't turn back, whose wife was gassed with her little boy, baby boy. So my uncle wasn't married by the time I met him after the war. His wife had been killed in Auschwitz, and he befriended Paula. That's why I said she wasn't my auntie till he married my aunt. She married my uncle. And so he made a home for us, and he said, when I come out the army, I'll get a house and we'll live together. So then we found my Uncle Gedalia. And Auntie Rivka and Uncle David had gone off to the Holy Land. So I had Uncle Gedalia there, and I had Uncle Haskell, who was older, and then he married Paula, and then we found cousins, my mother's cousins.
And where were you living?
That's when my uncle found he could get a house because he'd been in the army. And we lived in that house for a short while. And then...
In which town?
In Teplice-Shonov. It was more on the not German, the Sudetenland. And we lived in that house, and my uncles, two uncles now, and cousins, we all lived in the same house. And the men found jobs, and they found jobs in knitting factories where they knew the trade. And they took my brother to work there as well. And my poor brother must have been very ill then, but he didn't show it. Anyway, it took a few weeks, I think. It was only a matter of weeks after they got married that they decided, and my two uncles, Uncle Gedalia and Uncle Haskell, that they would also like to go to the Holy Land, and they would make their way there. What should they do with me and my brother? Because they didn't want to take us again, the same story, that it would be too difficult a thing to do. So he found an organization that was called Central British Fund. Central British, and they had permission to take 1,000 kids under 18. My brother just made the age because he gave the wrong date. And I was 16. I was 15, not quite 16. And we just lied about our age, or he did. And in fact, he lied too much because he was born, didn't have the 4 months worked out well. And my uncle said, you'll be better off to go to a country, a civilized country. And when we're ready, you'll come to the Holy Land. And we listened to him, and which was the saving my brother, really. By the time we got to Ireland, where we arrived in Britain, my brother was very ill. And that's when they discovered he had TB. And if he'd gone with them, he would never have lasted, because they made a journey or got to as far as Italy. And they had a child born by then. They were that long to get to that area. So sending us to Britain was the best thing for us. And they didn't get to Israel till after their first child was born. So he had a son again with his second wife, which was great when he got to Israel. Well, there was family there by then.
And when you came to Ireland, where did you stay in Ireland?
Well, there was a Jewish committee already by that time. It was under the Central British Fund by the government, and on the promise that we would only stay until we learned agriculture, and then we would be shipped off to Israel to build up Israel. But they didn't come to that. They didn't find 1,000 children. They only found 7. The group that came was only just 731 children. And we were divided between Ireland, Scotland, England. Some went, stopped off in Manchester, some were in different countries, different parts of Britain, not all in one place, as refugees.
And how long did you stay in Ireland?
Well, we stayed there quite a while because we learned, we were well looked after. There was teachers, doctors, psychiatrists, and there was a couple, and they were all of the generation that came before in 39, and they were already established people, and they volunteered to be there to look after us. And the committee was in London who financed all that on charity.
And it was a Jewish charity?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. Jewish Refugee Committee.
And did you go to school, or did you...
Well, some went to school. We were in Ireland, and we were schooled in Ireland as much as we could. We were too old to go to school. We weren't old enough to leave school, but we were too old to start again. Some. Very few got professional in the end because they were of an age they could still go to school. And of course before us there was the Kindertransport. They had their education here. But ours was doubtful. We had to learn a trade.
And what trade did you learn?
Naturally sent us to be dressmakers and milliners and tailors, and those that were ill stopped their training. My brothers couldn't. He was laid up for years with TB, and he was very, very, very ambitious. Although he didn't talk, he never talked about his experience. He was a very clever man. It was all in him, and he learned English, enough English to take up studying accountancy, and he studied accountancy within the sanatoriums. Yes, and they got better. They eventually got better. He qualified as an accountant while he was still in bed. And he became an accountant, and he had very good jobs.
And from Ireland did you come to...
We came to England, yes.
How old were you when you came to England?
I was 16. I came to England and into hostels. I lived in hostels with girls, girl hostels and boy hostels, and we could speak English by then because we had our English started in Ireland. And we were all sent out to work and lived in a hostel, and a lot of people found family in America, and they got sponsored to go to America to families. I didn't. We didn't. My brother and I had family in Israel, but they couldn't take us out, not at that time. And we got to English. We got to English. You know, we didn't want to go anywhere. But once we had to, the committees had to guarantee we wouldn't take up jobs from the English. So that's why we were all apprenticed.
And were you stationed in London?
Yes. Well, outside London, nearly. Just outside of London. In South London.
And at this time, did the Jewish community help you, or...?
The Jewish community in England weren't very hospitable. They weren't. We were of an age, I think, that we were threatened, their sons and daughters. That wasn't easy. When we talk to each other, we realize that we're all in the same boat. The parents were afraid of the boys getting their daughters and vice versa. But we got by that. We got by that. And but we all learned trades, and some of the boys learned the knowledge to be able to be taxi drivers. That paid off very well to begin with. And they did it, and some went for tailoring, made good jobs of it. Some business people, they all did well in London anyway. I did well as well because I was when the hostel emptied, I had made friends in South London, and I made friends with a family who had 2 daughters. And they were a lovely family, and when the hostel was emptying out, I had nowhere to go, and they invited me to live with them. And that's what I did.
It was a Jewish family?
A Jewish Sephardi family. And they treated me like a daughter. I rented. I was paying rent. The committee paid for me. They investigated the family. did the right things.
Do you recall the name of the family?
Of course I do. I lived with them till I got married.
What was their name?
I became a daughter, and my children called them Grandpa and Nana.
What was the name?
Mendoza.
And in which area of southern...
South London. Do you know South London? No. Well, South London, where the same place as Trevor's parents lived. In fact, just across the road from the family I lived.
And were they a traditional family? They
were from family. Yes.
From family.
Yeah.
And you went to shul, to the synagogue?
Yes, same synagogue. My Trevor's grandpa was as a warden in the shul, and she was a good shul goer. Another part of the family were in the choir in the shul. We had a very beautiful shul there in a place called Brixton. We lived in Herne Hill, South London, part of South London, and Brixton had the most beautiful shul. And Diane Steinberg was a rabbi, and we had Reuben Turner, both very good names to know. Reuben Turner was the husband who married us there.
And your husband was British? Yes.
My husband was born in London, yes.
And his parents, they didn't mind?
They were born Londoners, because East London, because their parents were my father-in-law's father he's still alive, great Grandpa Levy, was was a Russian Jew. And I think my mother-in-laws they were Polish.
And having a daughter-in-law who was a survivor, that wasn't a problem or an issue?
We won't talk about that.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
They were good people, as I said.
Rachel, did you have a lot of British Jewish friends who...
Of course.
And did they know that you were a survivor?
Well, at South London they knew I was a survivor, but my main interest was in the rest of the survivors that I came with. And we had a club in North London and Finchley, actually, Finchley Road, off Finchley Road, a very famous club today, and we're called the 45 Aid Society, and we ran under that name and still do, and we became a charity. So I used to travel from Herne Hill by bus to be with the other people in North London. I was an outsider, living South London. Nobody else was living South London, just me.
And
from all our North London group called 45 Society.
And with your husband, could you speak about your experiences as...
Oh, that's that different story. I never spoke to my husband about it, nor my children.
Did your husband ask you, or did...
He asked, but I never opened up till 50 years later.
And your children, you never discussed with your children?
No. Until I started being counselled, because my first counselling was terrible, and I was very ill after that, and then I had a counsellor friend, doctor friend, and he got me to start talking.
It was maybe just too painful and too emotional.
Yes.
And with your brother, you kept a close connection? My
brother was ill for years, of course, but he married. He came when he got better. He had a fantastic job. For people who came in the 39 years, when they escaped from Germany. They were also refugees at one time, and they had there was a company. He had a couple of jobs before, a company that brought in seeds from South America, of seeds for planting lots of things, and mainly pulses. and he worked for them till he died. Became their financial director. So he had a wonderful job, and he had got married to a non-Jewish nurse, of course, because he was being nursed by her. And in fact, she died a few months ago now, but he died very young. But he had a heart attack, but it mainly affected because of his weak lungs.
And Rachel, can I just ask, when you came to England and you got married, did you remain religious, or did you remain believing in Hashem?
I believe in God, and I go to shul, but I'm not that religious. I'm kosher to an extent, not fully kosher. I go out and eat something. I don't eat the bad things. I eat in a restaurant, whether it's fish mainly, but I eat outside.
But the traditions that you had growing up, it remained with you.
Traditions are still with me. Still cook like my mother. Still do the same things.
And how was it when you did open up and you did speak to your children and to your husband? Was it
difficult?
It must have been extremely difficult.
That was very difficult. I went through a very bad time, but eventually I mastered it, and I talked to kids, and I talked to adults, and I talked to clubs, and talked to synagogues. Yeah. And I got a medal.
Not only a medal, you were recognized by the many organizations, but mainly by the Queen.
By the Queen, yes, I met the Queen, and yes, and then I got a medal for, it's a British medal. I got an Eshet Chayil in our shul. My husband used to run he always became the shamas in shul every Yom Tov because they needed him. He was an engineer, he was a mechanical engineer. He designed all the artifacts that are in our shul that's still running beautifully.
What shul was it?
South London shul.
South London shul. And they did a painting. You were one of the, I think, 7 survivors.
He was Prince Charles. He wasn't king then. And he became king, and he invites us all to Christmas parties, pre-Christmas parties. Yeah. I don't know if he'll invite us as king, but he wasn't king yet. Was he king last time we went?
But he has a close connection.
Yeah, it was.
He has a close connection, no?
He
has
King and Queen.
King and Shelley's met them, yeah. Well, we were good friends with his first man in his household.
His private secretary.
Private secretary. We're good friends with him.
The grandmother was a Chasidei Motalam in Greece. She saved.
Yeah.
And he has a genuine affection for and a tremendous caring of survivors.
Yes, he does. He does. And he loved Lily.
Did you ever imagine one day that you would be recognized by the Queen when you came
Oh yeah, that's it. But you know, she was lovely, and I always admired her. But he's friendlier. I mean, you may talk to him. Whereas the Queen, we got instructions, you do not talk to the Queen. She talks to you. You answer, but you don't ask, you don't open anything other subject. You just answer to what she wants to know, but you don't talk to the Queen. But here, we talk to him the minute he comes out, don't we?
Yeah, you were first. The private secretary... No, don't. No. The private secretary saw Mum, exclaimed, Rachel, insisted that we go and stand in a specific spot. And
well, we'll be the first to be.
Yeah, we didn't know.
Speak
we didn't
to
know
him.
That was why.
No, the first time we didn't. They did the second time.
And Rachel, can I ask, because your story is, not your story, your life is so, it's just unbelievable. It really is. And you are amazing beyond belief. What message do you impart to your children and grandchildren and to the future generation?
I don't pass anything on to my children. They've got to take it. I don't tell them to remember this.
What message do you give, or what advice do you give to people?
I don't give advice.
Or a message? What?
I try not to specify anything, but when I speak to kids, I do tell them, that a child next to you is also the same person as you. It may not be Jewish, it may not be Muslim, it may not or be Muslim or not Muslim or not Jew or Jew. What can I say? I try to say things to children that would make a difference, and it does for that evening perhaps.
No, I think it will, you have ingrained something that will last forever. I think whoever hears your story and hears your message,
it's difficult to specifically say don't do this and don't do that. You can't dictate to people what they're going to do.
Well, Rachel, I am so grateful to you. I just want to thank you, Rachel.
You didn't sit properly there.
No, I just want to thank you.
Well, cut out what's not applicable.
Every single word is so applicable. But Rachel, I just want to thank you so much. This has been, for me, such a honor and a privilege.
Thank you.
So if I can just thank you very much. I'm so grateful to you, Rachel, really.
Oh, not at all. Don't be grateful.
It's been the biggest honor and privilege, really. And you are somebody that we should all strive to emulate. You really are. You are remarkable. And
thank you.
I know you've gone through like a living hell, but you've come out of it, not only survived, but you thrived. And I don't know, you are just very special, and you should live till 120 in good health and Muslim bracha. And there are no words to thank you enough, really.
Thank you, but I do my best. Sometimes I refuse now if it's very far away, but I don't normally refuse people if they want to hear my story.
But I know anybody who hears your story will be so touched, and you would have left such an indelible impression on anybody. So I'm so grateful for having had the opportunity to meet with you.
You're
and
welcome.
There are no words to thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.